You ever just get tired of playing console games at home? Sometimes I just miss the arcade experience, you know?
Oh yeah, this is way better.
It's great to see you all again here on Retro Rampage. It's been a while, but I'm glad to be back for another episode of Pinball Awesomeness. We barely scratched the surface with that first Pinball episode, and I've got a pretty special reason for doing this episode in the first place. I think it goes without saying that I love playing pinball, but finding actual tables to play is getting more difficult by the day. Last time, I was fortunate enough to review the tables that were in my uncle's personal collection, but finding more tables to review has been on my list for a while. That's the hard part though, actually finding the physical tables to play. I know I could just emulate a digital table on my PC, but it's not the same, you know? Part of the appeal of pinball is actually playing the real physical table in front of you, but that's just not really a realistic option anymore, as most of the tables are in private collections. With that being said, let me show you the reason I'm doing this episode today. Here at Washington Crown Center in Washington, Pennsylvania, I was surprised to see a new retro game store open up. This is Iron Blast Game Zone, and it's a pretty cool place to check out. There's a good variety of games for both retro and modern consoles, and there's some pretty uncommon stuff here. But why am I telling you about this place? After all, you can still find a good number of retro game stores out there. Well, in the back half of the store, they just have an arcade! Yeah, there's a full arcade at the back of the store, and it's an impressive collection of popular arcade favorites and other more uncommon cabinets. Everything's on free play, so you just pay for admission and it's an easy place to spend a few hours. And of course, there are pinball tables. So many pinball tables. I won't be looking at every single table that they have in the store, but I will be showing you some of my personal favorites in their lineup. With that said, I do want to thank everybody at Iron Blast Game Zone for letting me film these tables to show you today. Now then, what do you say we play some pinball? Let's kick things off with a classic from Gottlieb, 1979's Countdown, one of Gottlieb's earliest solid-state pinball tables. This table was also available in a two-player electromechanical configuration called Spacewalk, but the playfield is exactly the same. You might remember from last time that I really like outer space-themed tables, and this is no exception, with fantastic artwork on the playfield and backglass that you'd really only find during this time period. This astronaut looks pretty cool, but he's strapped down with more cables than a Sega Genesis CD32X, and he must be starting to hallucinate as there's some kind of alien fairy woman looking in through the side window. I don't really understand this, but the artwork is excellent, so who cares? Take a look at how the art incorporates the natural color of the wooden playfield into the smoke from the space shuttle. Clever use of colors like this is something I can appreciate, and the choice of colors used here is unique as well. It almost looks like a photo negative in some ways, but it really makes the playfield pop. At first glance, it looks like the table has a lot of empty space, but you'll find that Countdown still manages to pack in a lot of targets. Countdown really loves drop targets. There are 4 sets of them in total, making a total of 16 drop targets to aim for. Knocking down all 5 drop targets in a set will increase their point value should you knock them all down again, but what you should really be paying attention to is their color. You might notice that each set of drop targets is a different color. If you happen to knock them all down in the order of the colors shown here, your bonus will be multiplied up to 5 times. Speaking of the bonus, on most machines the only way to receive your bonus points is to let the ball drain. That still happens here, but if you manage to get your bonus up to 20,000 points, this light next to the kickout hole at the top will turn on. Get the ball into the kickout hole, and you will receive the entire bonus while still playing on the same ball. This is the core mechanic of the game. Aiming for those drop targets to try and get the bonus up to collect it early adds a lot of strategy to an otherwise simple playfield. The 2 extra flippers near the top can help to reach the upper rows of drop targets, and there's also a single pop bumper and 2 rollover targets at the playfield center, so reaching those upper targets can be challenging. I had a lot of fun with this one. It's difficult to hit all those targets in the right order, but it can be insanely rewarding when you manage it. Some might say that these older solid-state tables don't compare to the more advanced tables that came out in the 90s, but once you know the rules, it's easy to appreciate a table like this. Let's move forward 10 years for another Gottlieb machine, Big House from 1989. Gottlieb allegedly only manufactured 2,000 of these, which explains why this is the first one I've seen. This table has a prison break theme, with mobster animals apparently. You know, for a table themed to a prison escape, the playfield sure is colorful, and I've gotta say it has some pretty good music. Reminds me of a lot of Sega Genesis soundtracks. Try to launch the ball into the center lane here for the skill shot, but one thing you'll learn fast is that Big House loves to lock the ball. There are 3 areas with ball locks, and you'll want to hit all 3 to initiate the Prison Break multi-ball. The first lock is up here with this unique corkscrew elevator. After that ball is locked, you can shoot for this one under the ramp, which lowers in a cool visual and audio effect. With the ramp lowered, one successful ramp shot is all it takes to start the Prison Break multi-ball. Sirens start blaring, the prison warden warns that everyone is surrounded, and there are even searchlights at the top of the playfield. All 3 balls will be released from their locks as multi-ball begins, and it's a real challenge to keep them all in play. If 2 of the balls drain, you'll have to lock all 3 over again to restart the multi-ball. There are a few targets in the center to shoot for, as well as by the first ball lock, and the pop bumpers in the center take up a lot of real estate here, but when you get right down to it, you'll be shooting for the ball locks most of the time trying to start multi-ball. The rules might sound simple, but I got hooked pretty quickly, and it's worth it to play just to get another shot at one of the more challenging rounds of multi-ball I've ever tried. This table is also full of voice lines from the characters as they attempt to escape, which fit well with the already great music. I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite pinball tables, but it's an uncommon sight and definitely worth playing if you happen to stumble across one.
I'll never get out of here. Stop! Get there! Ah.
The following year after Big House was released, Data East would release The Phantom of the Opera. Instead of being based on the musical, the table is based on the original 1910 novel of the same name, and it's really faithful to the source material. The thing I have to bring attention to right away here is the absolutely phenomenal artwork, both on the translate and especially on the playfield. Designer Paul Ferris really put a lot of work into this, and it's worth appreciating before even starting the game up. We actually get a bit of speech from the Phantom as soon as a new game is started. And the music that follows is just as awesome. It's not very elaborate or anything, but it has a good beat to it and it will speed up as the game continues. So let's talk about what's going on here. The entire table has an opera house theme, obviously, and that means that most of the elements are going to be themed as such. You can take this ramp to go up on the catwalk, there's a trap door beneath the stage, and in the top right of the playfield is the main element, the opening organ. Normally, the organ will show the fallen chandelier that the Phantom drops on the audience, but at certain times during gameplay, it will actually open up to reveal a secret entranceway. This is where you can lock balls to work toward an eventual multi-ball. One more thing to note about this table is actually on the translate. The Phantom's mask is translucent when lit from behind, revealing his true face. It reminds me of the recessed eyeball from Mystic, which I talked about in the last video. This is a good example of a table that would be pretty middle of the road otherwise, but the theme helps to elevate it in my personal ranking. Check out the second table Data East ever designed, Secret Service from 1988. If you couldn't tell already, this table has a secret agent theme. It really gives me a James Bond kind of vibe, and even though they didn't get the James Bond license for this, they put that money towards the music instead, incorporating music from Mission Impossible, Get Smart, and even the Johnny Rivers classic Secret Agent Man. Of course, these are all renditions of the tracks played off the table's sound hardware, so they don't sound exactly the same as the originals, but they're still recognizable. The awesome art on the translate is not an illustration, even though it might look that way. Data East actually staged a photo shoot with real actors and vehicles to capture this image, and if you ask me, the effort was worth it. The people in the car giving chase are actually Data East employees, kind of a fun Easter egg. The game takes the secret agent theme and runs with it as soon as you press the start button, as it uses the light bar above the back box to conduct a retinal scan.
Agent 001. Retina scan completed. Begin play.
Pretty cool, and one other thing you're likely to notice as soon as the game starts is the digital stereo. As you play, sound effects and voice clips will frequently bounce between the left and right speakers. Taking a look at the playfield, government landmarks are the theme here. We've got the Capitol building front and center, and the White House here on the left. The Capitol building has a few targets to hit, and the White House has drop targets, and oh man, we've got spinners. I mentioned this in the last pinball video, but spinners are some of my favorite elements in all of pinball, right up there with ramps, and Secret Service has a pretty unique one. The ramp actually goes through the White House, and this is how you access the ball lock. If you get a second ball up here, the first one will be released before the second one locks. I'm not sure how the game can tell that a ball is coming down the ramp, but it makes for a fast game that keeps you on your toes. I can't forget to mention that the game actually has a stopper that pops up at times between the flippers to prevent the ball from draining. As much as I love pinball, I'm pretty terrible at it, so it's nice to be able to relax from time to time with the knowledge that the ball can't drain. But that's Secret Service, a pretty great table considering how early it was in Data East's lineup. The only thing I have left to show you here is what happens when you get a game over.
baby, you're the best.
For fans of the Roger Moore Bond films, this is a great touch. Here's a table that a lot of people love, Red and Ted's Roadshow, released by Williams in 1994. If you've ever seen Funhouse with Rudy, the talking ventriloquist dummy, then this should look pretty familiar to you. The difference here is that we've got two heads instead of one. Red and Ted are two construction workers, and the goal of the game is to help them travel across the United States to a ton of major cities. This is what's known as a wide-body table, which means the playfield on this is absolutely massive. It's actually got a shaker motor inside that makes the whole table vibrate to simulate explosions. I'm not going to go into as much detail here regarding the rules of the game because this one is a lot more involved than the other tables I've talked about so far. But the gist here is that every city you reach will start its own unique scoring mode. So yes, that means there are 18 different modes to activate in Roadshow. You probably noticed from the footage here that this table has two plungers. Some of the game modes will route the ball onto the left side of the playfield, and from there you can use the left plunger to shoot the ball up an additional ramp. Of course, the highlights of the playfield here are the talking heads of Red and Ted. They react during gameplay, and they're pretty expressive all things considered. You can shoot the ball into Ted's mouth when this barrier lifts up, which is how you start Multiball, and Red gets more and more upset every time the ball hits her in the face. Red is actually voiced by country singer Carlene Carter, and Carter's 1993 track, Every Little Thing, is featured here on Roadshow, making this table really hard to film without getting a copyright strike. Seriously though, there's so much to look at on this table, it can be kind of hard to keep track of what you're doing, but there's no shortage of targets to shoot for, and it's as addictive as pinball machines come. Roadshow is a good time no matter how good you are at pinball, and all the extra features on the playfield and the audio side of things make this one of the highlights of the Williams wide-body lineup. Time to check out a table that's actually based on a video game, Street Fighter II by Gottlieb. Of course they had to make a pinball version of a game that already had like 37 different versions across multiple platforms. Oh, but this is Street Fighter II Champion Edition, not to be confused with Street Fighter II Special Champion Edition for the Sega Genesis. Jokes aside, this is a pretty faithful adaptation of multiple elements from the arcade game. The translate art is pretty cool, except for Chun-Li's face, it looks kind of off, and the colors on the playfield look excellent. The contrast between the blue and orange really make it pop. Just like the arcade game, the goal here is to defeat all of the challenging fighters around the world and become the victor of the Street Fighter circuit. These lights down here will always tell you how many fighters you've defeated, and the game uses a lot of sound effects taken straight from the arcade version. A lot of dialogue here is voiced as well, presumably by M. Bison, who's front and center on the playfield, as he should be. All the fighters from the original arcade version are represented here in some way, with my favorite being the spinning Chun-Li helicopter kick on the upper ramp here. Even the famous car-crushing bonus game is represented here, with a unique lower playfield viewable through a clear plastic cover. This area has its own flipper that you'll use to hit the car repeatedly when you trigger this mode. It's easy to win, but still great that they thought to include this in the table. One aspect of this table that I can praise to no end is the music. It sounds fantastic. The renditions of the individual character themes are spot on, and they really get you excited to keep playing. Especially these versions of Ryu's theme and Guile's theme. The entire soundtrack pretty much sounds like how Special Champion Edition could have sounded if they had actually put effort into it. For fans of the Street Fighter series, this is an easy recommendation, but without the theme to help it along, this is still a relatively solid table layout, if not a bit repetitive.
Okay, that's gotta be it. I don't know how much longer I can talk about pinball without talking about something really... Okay, one more.
Alright, I know I said I was done, but this is just too cool for me to pass up. This is Baby Pac-Man, released in 1982 by Bally. Everyone who's ever played a video game is likely familiar with the original arcade Pac-Man, but very few are aware that this game exists, and that it's a combination arcade and pinball game. These cabinets are very sought after, and this is actually the first Baby Pac-Man cabinet I've seen in person, so you know I just have to spotlight it here as a special bonus. When you start the game, you'll begin up on the monitor, and it just looks like original Pac-Man, but with one major difference. This version of Pac-Man is hard. The ghosts will relentlessly pursue you, and there are no power pellets to speak of in the maze. But you might be wondering, what are these two chutes at the bottom of the maze? Well, if you go down them, that begins the pinball portion of the cabinet, and this is how you earn fruits and, more importantly, power pellets. By hitting these drop targets and spelling out Pac-Man, you can earn one or multiple power pellets that will appear in the maze when your ball drains. There are 2 spinners to aim for, 2 kick-out holes, and even a captive ball at the top of the playfield. If you're good at pinball, then you could potentially end up with a surplus of power pellets, but if the smaller playfield gives you trouble and the ball drains, then you're suddenly looking at one of the most difficult games of Pac-Man ever created. Despite its unique design, Baby Pac-Man was not well received, and Bally Midway would only make one more hybrid cabinet, that being Granny and the Gators, before giving up on them entirely. In addition to being pretty rare, Baby Pac-Man cabinets have a reputation for being unreliable and requiring a lot of maintenance, so to find one here in working condition, much less getting to film it for the channel, has made this entire video worth it if you ask me. I just think hybrid cabinets like this one are the coolest things. Could be because I've never seen one of these before, but it's such a unique arcade game, and unique things like that are some of the main reasons people continue to appreciate pinball to this day. Every table, no matter how mediocre, has something that makes it unique, and I stand by my word when I say there's a pinball table out there to appeal to everyone. We played some great ones today, and I hope you all enjoyed taking a close look at them. And of course, a huge thank you to Iron Blast Game Zone for allowing me to film in their arcade, and also for maintaining these machines. If you happen to find yourself in the Washington, Pennsylvania area, definitely consider checking the store out. I'll leave a link to their Facebook page down in the description. It's not every day a brand new retro game store opens up, much less one with an arcade, so places like these do deserve our support. Pinball continues to be one of my favorite arcade staples, and despite the convenience of emulation, I'd still say it's worth going out of your way to find some real arcade tables. There's really nothing like playing on the real thing, and provided I can find some more tables to film, I'm sure I'll be doing a Pinball Tables Volume 3 somewhere down the road. I really appreciate you all for watching Retro Rampage, and I hope all you pinball fans out there enjoyed this one. But now, I think it's about time for me to head back to Game Zone and check on something I forgot to ask about. I promise it's important.
They don't have Garfield the Lost Levels!